Now it's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation.
What are you people? On dope?
Where you can toke.
I inhale frequently.
Or you can talk.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
Or you can toke and talk.
10 federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
While we talk about toke on Toker Talk Radio.
So, by the way, when it comes to pot, if you're 40 years old, you live in a log cabin in Oregon, you got 12 giant pot plants in your backyard, have a ball.
Live from beautiful Portland, Oregon at Rolla J Studios.
Hey, this is great. Yes, cannabis.
Plus your calls live at 971-533-7111.
They're walking on their pants with their cap on backwards, listening to Enema Man and Snoopy Poop Dog.
What's to keep somebody from getting all potted up on weed and then getting behind the wheel? Gateway theory doesn't work. It's a reality.
Holland, is it real? Don't tease me.
We're locking up people that take a couple of puffs of marijuana, and the next thing you know, they got 10 years.
And now, here's your host, the guru of ganja graphics, the sultan of sativa statistics, and the worst nightmare of a reefer mad prohibitionist. A polite, perspicacious, productive pothead with a propensity for PowerPoint. Radical Russ Belville.
Welcome back, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. 4:02 in the Pacific time zone. Time for Toker Talk Radio. Our phone lines are open at 971-533-7111. I want to remind our listeners we are brought to you by a lot of great sponsors. One of them, Vapes.buzz, the short home of PortableVaporizersNow.com. And if you go to PortableVaporizersNow.com or Vapes.buzz, you can get 10% off your order of vaporizers and vaporizer accessories. Use the promo code 420radio and get 10% off at vapes.buzz. Do it now. Show them that you appreciate their support of independent marijuana media. Speaking of being independent marijuana media, boy, what a busy schedule that's loaded up on my plate. I just got back from San Bernardino. This weekend, I'm headed to San Francisco, California for the International Cannabis Business Conference. It's taking place Sunday and Monday. So we will have a show on Friday, our regularly scheduled show on Friday. But next Monday will not be our regularly scheduled program. We will have to go into a replay as I will be covering day 2 at the International Cannabis Business Conference in San Francisco. Now, we might provide live streaming audio. We still have to work out whether or not we're going to have internet there at the conference. I believe we do, and should be okay for that. But also, a few things are up in the air because tonight I'm headed to the local electronics store here in Portland to purchase some new gear for 420 Radio, a couple of new computers and some audio gear, maybe a camera. It's our goal to bring you the best coverage of legalization in 2015, and we have a whole lot of work to do to make that happen. So we're hoping that you'll be paying attention over the next couple of weeks and enjoying the new crystal clear streaming, broadcasting, and filming, videoing. I guess it's not filming anymore. There's no film. Videoing that we'll be doing at the International Cannabis Business Conference. All sorts of great guests coming up there, including Dr. Carl Hart, looking forward to his keynote speech, Dr. Amanda Ryman, Congressman Dana Rohrabacher, many, many people, of course, emceed by Ngayo Belam, who's always one of our favorites. Coming up next week, middle of the week, Wednesday, February 18th, special guest on the show will be Sharon Ravert, the executive director of Peachtree Normal, and she may be joining us all week long from that point on. She will be in town here in Portland, getting some well-deserved rest and relaxation through the 25th. And then on the 28th, we will be visited by Sean McAllister. He'll be flying in actually Friday, and we'll probably have him on that Friday, the 27th show. He's the executive director of Dallas-Fort Worth Normal, probably the most active and successful normal chapter in the country, and it's in Texas, of all places. Pretty excited about that. Now, going back to the stoned driver thing, just real quick to wrap that up. I've heard so many parents. Now, I always have to give the caveat that I have no kids, so judge me if you will. But I have heard so many parents that I've spoken to over the years who said, I'd much rather my kid smoke pot than used alcohol. I'd much rather my kid was in a car with someone who was stoned than in a car with someone who was drunk. And I imagine you've probably heard this too over the years. And again, I don't think that's by accident. I think people understand that marijuana, while it's not something, you're not encouraging people to go get stoned and see how well they do on the driver's test, right? That's not the goal. But I think people understand that marijuana doesn't make you risky or foolhardy in any sort of way. That you don't become a danger per se to the people around you. Maybe annoying, right? The stone driver might be the one that doesn't turn off his blinker, after making a turn, or misses the exit, or goes too slow, or gets lost, whatever. But none of these things, while they may be annoying, are anything that the rest of the world needs to fear. And I'm so excited about this number because coming in March at Texas Christian University, I'll be in a debate with Kevin Sabet, and I know one of his favorite talking points is that 2 times crash risk damage, or crash risk of people that are using marijuana. And one of his stock lines is, well, you can smoke a cigarette and still drive a car. Well, according to the National Traffic Safety Administration, Kevin, you can apparently smoke a marijuana cigarette and still drive a car and have no greater chance of crash risk than someone who's completely sober. It's something that those of us who've been marijuana smokers have known for a long time now.
Five of the last 9 major party candidates to run for president, 3 of the last 9 vice presidential candidates, and the last 3 two-term presidents have all smoked pot. Marijuana, the gateway drug to the White House. This is the Russ Belville Show. You can get 420 Radio on the go with the TuneIn Radio app for all mobile platforms. Go to rad-r.us/420tunein or just click the TuneIn Radio icon below the live radio feed on 420radio.org. This is Radical Russ encouraging you to take a look at the Weed Blog every day. Johnny Green and the staff at the Weed Blog are on top of all the latest developments in the fight to end marijuana prohibition nationwide. You can even get the Weed Blog on your smartphone by installing the Weed Blog app for iPhone and Android. If it's about weed, it's on the Weed Blog, including my original writing. So don't delay. Read the Weed Blog today.
Big Daddy thinks.
Funky roller ring.
Oh yeah, this is Big Daddy, and I'll be your freakazoid every Thursday night, right here at the Funky Roller Ring.
Funky Roller Ring.
11 Eastern, 8 Pacific, only on RadicalRuss.com.
Sir, do you think there will or should come a time for us to discuss the possibility of legalization, regulation, and control of all drugs, thereby doing away with the violent criminal market as well as a major source of funding for international terrorism? Thank you so much for your time, Mr. President.
Well, I think this is an entirely legitimate topic for debate.
Name the time and place, Mr. President. Radical Russ has been prepping for this debate full-time since 2005. The Russ Belville Show.
Welcome back, everyone. 11 after the hour. That's music from Gomyo, my hoodie monk out there in Japan with Roll Me. You know, in Japan, it's not 420. It's 831. Yeah, the code for marijuana smoking in Japan is 831. And it's a pun. Kind of like, you know, well, I guess 710 is not a pun so much as it's a symbology. Well, I guess it's a symbolic pun. I don't know. You know, 710 is the oil thing because you take 710, you turn it upside down, it says OIL, right? Well, 831 in Japan is kind of that way, but more in a sense of a pun. The Japanese words for vegetable also very closely match 831 as far as pronunciation and look and all that, right? So, you know, vegetable, like an herb, like a plant, right? So they call it 831. Kind of interesting, huh? Follow up on that driver's study information from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. You know, one of the reasons why these studies are now coming back and saying there's no risk of impairment from people that are THC positive is partially just telling us that being THC positive is not an indicator of impairment. And we're talking active THC in the blood, not, you know, urine metabolites or anything. But that's part of what these studies are showing us, is that when you take a sample of people with THC in their blood, that does not mean you're taking a sample of people who are impaired at the time. And so while it's good that this study has come out and said that, you know, THC in your blood is no greater risk of a crash, it doesn't tell us that being impaired by marijuana isn't going to cause a greater risk of crash. That is, our sample is too big. We're catching everyone who's ever smoked pot within a certain amount of time, rather than the people who smoked pot recently enough and have low enough tolerance that they could be impaired. And that's the problem with any of these impairment studies that are based on bodily fluid recognition of THC in your system. It does not tell us anything about the state of the mind of the person or their abilities at that time. Now, I support all efforts, all scientific efforts to determine that. You know, my opposition to the per se nanogram, you know, THC in the blood is opposition based on science, not support of stone driving. Okay? And I've always been very careful throughout my career to say, don't smoke and drive impaired. You'll notice I never say don't smoke and drive. Because I believe that you can smoke and drive. Now, how long should you wait between the smoking and the driving part? There's no hard and fast number. Someone who has an extreme tolerance to marijuana, who's been using it all the time for a long time, can smoke a joint behind the wheel. They could be actively smoking and not be impaired to any reasonable degree. That is fully within the realm of possibility. I've seen it. I've seen it in action. And then for other people, there's some out there that could take one puff off a vaporizer pen and shouldn't get behind the wheel for another 6 hours. That's also within the range. But you know what's nice about marijuana? See, with alcohol, there's this graph, right? There's that blood alcohol graph. I'm a 240-pound man, and I've had 3 drinks within 2 hours, and across this one and that one, and there I am. I'm at 0.04 or whatever it is, right? So there's this standardized chart for everyone. Now, that's good for the law enforcement types, and it's good for the drinkers out there because they've got this number, this chart they can go by to kind of guide them. But isn't it kind of a false sense of security to need a chart to tell you that you're too fucked up to get behind the wheel? Have you ever thought of it that way? Really? Right? Like the guy who's sitting there,
I see, I have 4 drinks, and it's been an hour, so yay, I can drive.
Right? He may be fucked up beyond all repair, but because a chart says he's at 0.07, he goes and decides to drive. So I'm actually the kind of person that thinks that the fact that there is a blood alcohol chart and that it's necessary kind of shows how alcohol ruins our ability to self-determine that impairment level. Now, the negative side of cannabis from the law enforcement perspective is that lack of a per se number, that lack of a fixed chart that says, oh, well, you're a 300-pound person and you've smoked 4 grams and therefore you're at this and you're too fucked up. That doesn't exist for cannabis. It doesn't. It physiologically can't. The molecules don't work that way. And that pisses off the law enforcement types. They hate that. They hate the idea that on a case-by-case-by-case basis, they have to establish whether or not someone was too impaired. They have to take a look at the totality of the facts, of everything that's going on, the reported, what the driver was acting like, how they were acting, where they slurred their speech, were their eyes glossy, bloodshot, were they able to walk the line and touch their finger to their nose and recite the alphabet backwards, skipping the vowels. I mean, they hate that idea. What the cops love is, here, give me some pee. Here, give me some blood. Oh, look, it's over this number. You're busted. And that's not necessarily to demean the cops, right? You know, there's an intelligence quotient limit to becoming a cop. I'd like to keep things as simple as possible for them, especially when it comes to upholding our rights and knowing that here's the line, don't cross it. I understand that need. But physiologically speaking, in the way that cannabis acts on the individual, each individual can determine whether they're too high to drive. And most won't. And to me, this becomes a question of a balancing test. I will accept that with legalized marijuana, and hell, even with illegal marijuana, even with marijuana right now, I will accept there are a certain number of individuals who will be irresponsible, who will get too impaired, and who will get behind the wheel, and should not be, and are too high to be driving. I'm going to say that's a non-zero number. It's a percentage worth worrying about. I'm not going to give you a specific percentage. I don't know. Is it 1%? Is it 2%? I don't know. Doesn't matter, but it's a number worth worrying about, right? Okay, so that's our X. We don't know how many it is, but legal or illegal, a certain number of people are going to drive fucked up. Now, the Y in this equation, the other variable we got to think of is when we set a limit or we set some sort of standard, how effective is it going to be at catching X, at determining X, and how overly broad is it going to be in catching more people and convicting of them in a situation where they weren't impaired? That would be our Y variable. Okay? So if we set up some sort of system to determine who's impaired, too impaired, not impaired, it's a balancing test between, is it accurate enough to catch the people who are really a danger? Or is it so broad that it catches some of them and, it's the big dolphin net, right? The tuna net that catches the dolphins too, right? It's catching too many. That was the big complaint about I-502 with Washington State, was that it was going to catch unimpaired people. And sure enough, you've heard these tales of people that have gotten busted, had to spend thousands of dollars on attorneys to get out of a DUI that they probably didn't deserve. So this continuing of calling people that have THC in their system stone drivers is actually defeating our efforts to determine if someone who's really impaired on marijuana, what level that should be, or whether they should be able to drive. We got to start dealing with the facts as they are, the scientific facts.
Well, Lottie frickin' da!
All right, it's 4:20 here in the Pacific time zone, 4:20 on the West Coast, which is still the best coast. A little rainy and gray up here in Portland, Oregon, but we're heading to San Francisco this weekend. International Cannabis Business Conference and Valentine's Day with my lovely wife. Yay! In downtown San Francisco. The fringe benefits kick ass, folks. Be back with Electric Bob right after this.
You can get 420 Radio on the go with the Ustream video app for Android and iPhone. Go to rad-r.us/420Ustream or just click the Ustream app icon for Android or iPhone below the live radio feed at 420 Radio.
The Green Cross has been an amazing source of cannabis medicines for my pain management. Whether I need edibles or tinctures or topicals, I'm able to combine the 2 or 3 to give me really successful pain control.
It's the delivery service that Green Cross provides is just incredible. You get your medicine and it's delivered by a person that you trust.
Whether we come to you or you come to us, the Green Cross delivers.
Georgia. Hi, this is Willie Nelson. Alcohol prohibition didn't work in the 1920s, and marijuana prohibition isn't working today. It's time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
Are you in the market for portable vaporizers now? Get online to vapes.buzz, the quick and easy link to portablevaporizers.now.com. Vapes.buzz has everything you're looking for, including vape pens, herbal vaporizers, e-juice, parts, accessories, and more. Visit vapes.buzz and save 5% instantly or give them a call at 866-264-2415. Vapes.buzz. Get vaping, baby!
Everyone knows music and marijuana go together, so let's wind up our 20 after break with the Russ Belville Show's Daily Toker Tunes, the best in pod-safe 420 music from around the web. Today is Electric Tuesday, featuring the latest in electronic dance music and other cutting-edge genres. Now, sit back and enjoy your Daily Toker Tune.
Welcome back, everyone. 23 and a half after the hour, and we make our way down to Arizona, where I'm sure it's much warmer, and Electric Bob is hanging out. How you doing, Bob? Bob, we got you? Are you there, Mr. Bob?
Oh, I'm sorry. I had my microphone off. My bad.
Oh, I understand. For a second, I just thought you were stoned.
Oh well, I am, but
we can't blame that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's partly the reason, but yeah, it's pretty nice outside.
Right on, yeah. What's happening?
Not much. Did you hear about Jamaica? I think they either decriminalized it or legalized it yesterday.
Yeah.
On Bob Marley's birthday.
On Bob Marley's birthday, the Jamaican Senate passed a historic decrim proposal. I mean, a lot of people didn't know that weed was illegal in Jamaica, but it is.
Yeah, everyone just kind of, well, for vacationers, the cops just probably just look past it.
Oh yeah,
because that's a lot of money that they'd be losing.
I have a couple of friends in Idaho who regularly visit Jamaica. Like every year they go there. They say it's just wonderful. The people are so friendly, and the costs are really reasonable. I mean, it's expensive to get there, but once you're there, it's pretty cheap.
Yeah, I heard you can get like a whole garbage, or not a garbage bag full, but like a nice bag full for like $5.
Yeah, ridiculously cheap on the weed prices. I had one friend who was talking to me who he's like, he found someone that was going to get weed, and the guy was like, well, how much weed do you want? And he was like from New York, so he's saying, $100 worth, I suppose. The guy comes back with like a hefty bag.
But how's the quality out there, though?
Hey, I'm willing to try it and find out.
Yeah, it's same here. Like I'll take a garbage bag full of weed
any day. Hey, we're going to remind folks that coming up tonight at 8 p.m. Pacific time, we've got Electric Bob's Boogaloo. What do you got on tap for us tonight?
I got a brand new mix. It's drum and bass, a little bit of this like Chicago footwork housey type of stuff, and some new. A lot of people are, like the old like '92 to '93 hardcore rave tracks that were coming out of the UK.
Yeah.
A lot of people are doing that type of style now.
Oh, all right. Kind of a resurgence of a 90s rave scene then.
Yeah, exactly. There's one of the labels I work with, Dread Collective. They're putting that's a 40-track EP. It's all new rave stuff.
Right on.
That still has that spirit. That still has that spirit of like the old stuff.
Very cool. All right, so what do we got for today's Daily Toker tune?
This is Jake Camara. He's out of Baltimore. This is kind of an ode to Bernie Mac. He takes the video, one of his comedy videos, and kind of edits it, and he puts like the nice like beat. It's a footwork song. It's a Chicago footwork. It's big over there right now. It's been there for about 10 years. It evolved out of house and Chicago house, and then booty house, and all those subgenres.
Here we go.
I ain't scared of you motherfuckers.
.420 Radio is 24-hour marijuana legalization radio. The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, treat law enforcement with respect and stand up for your rights by repeating, "I respectfully invoke all of my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak with my attorney." Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at omarfigueroa.com.
Funky Roller Ring.
Oh, yeah.
What's happening, Groovy Cats? This is your Funk Master of Ceremonies, Big Daddy, and I want you to join me every Thursday night at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific, right here at the Funky Roller Ring.
Oh, yeah.
Your home of soul, funk, and disco, baby.
Funky-licious.
There's always a party at the Funky Roller Ring.
Growing plants indoors can be a rewarding hobby, but electricity bills can go through the roof. Then you have to cool down all those big hot lights. It can drive a grower insane. With Lush LED lighting, you can solve many of these issues and double your rewards. Matt and his scientists have developed the perfect light for flowering plants with far less cost and heat. And the results? Very effective. Check out LushLEDlighting.com right now and tell them Radical Russ sent you. Adam Hand of Handmade Apparel produces quality custom designs for t-shirts, hats, and other apparel. Handmade Apparel is the official design shop for 420 Radio among many clients who rely on Adam Hand for everything from short-run custom projects to full-run clothing lines. Visit handmadeapparel.biz to browse the selection of handmade gear or to get a personal quote for your own designs. Handmade Apparel, a proud supporter of 420radio.org. Mark Twain once said that when there's a gold rush, it's a good time to be in the pick and shovel business. Today we look at the rapidly evolving markets in the marijuana green rush in our Cannabusiness Chronicles.
Today I'd like to talk to everybody about a topic that is becoming much more important as we continue in this marijuana green rush, and that is how to not piss off your Cannabusiness clientele. This is a presentation I delivered at the High Times Southern California Cannabis Cup in 2015. Part of understanding this green rush is understanding the players in the green rush and how their differing backgrounds lead them to their decision-making processes that sometimes backfire when it comes to understanding their most prized audience, their most prized customers, the cannabis consumers. I like to think of these as three different types of players in the green rush. I call them the heads, the suits, and the closeted. Now, the heads are the illegal growers and dealers who have been working in the industry for decades now, and they bring a deep marijuana knowledge to the green rush. They know more about the plant, its culture, its sales, its marketing than anyone else involved. But the con is the fact that they have very little legitimate business knowledge. They know the black markets, they know how they work, but when it comes to regulators and taxes and fees and paperwork, they have little to no understanding of how those things work. The other group, the suits, are the business entrepreneurs. These are the people that see the green rush as just the next big bubble, the next big market, a place where they can make a whole lot of money. They could care less whether it's marijuana or cheeseburgers. They just see a way of developing business. The pro is that they bring a deep business knowledge to the movement, a business knowledge that has been lacking for decades because it's been illegal. But of course, the downside is they have next to no knowledge of marijuana or its consumers, and all of the trials and tribulations and hardships we've been through as a criminal community. Finally, there are the closeted people. Those are the people who have been marijuana consumers, but they've been in the business world as well. And as workers or middle management have been unable to show that they know much about the marijuana world. So they do have some business knowledge, some professionalism that they will bring from their other businesses they've been involved with. not the marijuana business, but from outside businesses. And they will bring some marijuana knowledge, not as much as the people who've been growing and selling, but as consumers, at least they have some idea of the culture involved with marijuana. This presentation is primarily for the suits to help them understand the mistakes that can be made, but also could apply a bit to the closeted as well. The important thing to understand is that marijuana ain't cheeseburgers. While many of the suits have come to this movement thanks to the influx of billions and billions of dollars that are to be made from a newly legal marijuana market, they have to understand that the product being sold here is much more than just a product. It has significant meaning for the people that have been using it all these decades. Marijuana consumers have a special relationship and even an identity that are born upon their love of marijuana. All people who are cannabis consumers, who consider themselves marijuana aficionados, if you will, have been labeled criminals for that choice for 40 years now. But while all of them enjoy a similar criminal status, they also come to that criminal status through 4 different avenues. We have some who are commonly known as the stoners, who just have a cultural affiliation with marijuana. Just as being outlaw consumers, they've developed their own culture, their own rights, and so forth. We also have people that are worshipers. They have a religious identity built into cannabis. These could be the Rastafarians or even people without a particular organized religion, but subscribe to natural healing and natural products. We have people that are criminals because of medical necessity. Those would be the patients, the medical marijuana patients that we see in the front and the center of the movement so often, who have no choice but to become criminals. And we have the activists, those who are motivated by political ideology, who, whether it was marijuana or not, see the freedom inherent in this issue and are fighting for it. And it's because of these affiliations, because of these identities, that marijuana ain't cheeseburgers. And those people who are going to be selling to this community need to take these factors into account. Today's presentation is going to give you 5 real-world examples where companies have not taken those 5 statuses into account and suffered severe business losses because of it. Our first story will be about Open Vape versus the criminal identification. Open Vape misjudged their customers' reaction to a drug testing plan for their employees because of their ignorance of marijuana consumers' history of workplace and criminal oppression. We'll talk about the marketing company Cannabrand versus the stoners. Cannabrand goes and offends its largest customer base by denigrating frequent cannabis consumers as stoners who need to be weeded out. We'll talk about Privateer Holdings, the large firm that owns many cannabis businesses, versus the worshipers, those who find cannabis to be a sacrament, as their CEO denigrated marijuana culture, specifically the culture of Rastafarian Bob Marley, but then recanted as soon as the opportunity to sell Bob Marley's image for profits arose. We'll tell the story of Responsible Ohio versus the patients in Ohio, and how this new marijuana cartel monopoly hijacked an existing patient activist brand. And finally, we'll wind up with TerraTech versus the activists, a company that hijacked a very visible marijuana culture brand from a well-known activist. Story number 1 begins with Open Vape and something we call the drug testing debacle. On April 17th of last year, there was a press release from Open Vape, this vaporizer pen company, that announced that the nation's largest cannabis brand will test employees for dangerous drug abuse. Now, the policy was touted as being a progressive drug testing policy in that they would not be testing for cannabis in the worker system, but for what they called dangerous drugs. Todd Mitchum, who at the time was Open Vape's corporate spokesperson, said, quote, "Our view is simple. We won't tolerate dangerous drug use by our employees," end quote. And how they misjudge the cannabis community is because as criminals, for our marijuana use, we have been discriminated against through workplace drug testing. And we feel that it's not what drug you're detecting in someone's urine. It's that you're demanding someone's urine to determine their competency in the first place? Now, this is a legitimate complaint many people in both the activism and just the general marijuana community brought up with Todd Mitchum from Open Vape, and when called out on this, he responded with the biggest public relations disaster in the infant cannabis industry. Many prominent marijuana activists, including myself, Todd Angel from Marijuana Majority, and others, began a Twitter conversation with Open Vape that began with, "Can we talk about reversing discriminatory open vape drug testing policy as soon as possible in lieu of a public campaign or petition against it?" A pretty rational and measured response, I would say, asking, hey, let's talk about this, rather than starting off with a boycott. Open Vape replied, "We are keeping people safe. So sorry you don't care about employee safety. Grown-ups need to behave differently." Folks, marijuana consumers are not motivated to buy your product through passive-aggressive taunts that we are somehow immature children who support dangerous workplaces. The marijuana side replied with, "Sorry, drug testing flies in the face of everything the marijuana movement's about. You will never see me buy one of your products." And Open Vape replied, "I guess I missed the memo where the marijuana community was fighting for employers embracing the abuse of dangerous drugs." Now, when influential movement activists are expressing why you've angered them, implying that everyone who follows them supports workplace drug abuse costs you one customer for every direct follower and every retweeted mention. Tens of thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of people were following this conversation between marijuana activists and one of the leading vapor pen companies. Our side continued, "If employers can't decide whether or not an applicant is a meth addict via interviews, they are incompetent." Open Vape replied, "The point here is that we must teach the public cannabis doesn't belong in the same category as dangerous drugs." And the public can be taught that, but they don't have to be taught that through oppressing people with workplace drug tests. It wasn't too long ago that marijuana consumers were using the dangerous drug that didn't belong in the same category as alcohol. If you belong to an oppressed community like the community of criminals who have used marijuana, you become very sensitive when people call for the oppression of other illegal communities. The marijuana side replied, "Public relations strategy gone wrong. You will face backlash from us activists who have worked to make your industry legal." Open Vape replied, "The strategy was careful to support mainstream cannabis use, but protect the industry from dangerous accidents." Once again, using the language of the oppressor is quickly noticed by the formerly oppressed. This rationale of protecting the workplace from dangerous accidents was the same excuse they used to deny us our rights as well. Finally, the marijuana side concluded with, Todd Mitchum missed the memo not to mess with marijuana activists who are so good, we passed laws that led to his industry's very creation. Open Vape replied, "Tom, it's unfortunate that you did not call me directly. We could have had a real grown-up discussion." Condescension is never a good way to sell your brand. When you start a fire, it's not the fire department's job to call you. Due diligence as a public relations expert in a cannabis company would include reaching out to cannabis experts before announcing your policy, or at the very least, reaching out to them after they complain. And there is a happy ending to this story, as Open Vape did reach out to Normal and other researchers to discuss a better drug testing policy, one that involves detecting actual impairment rather than using bodily fluids. Open Vape agreed to it and is now setting a standard for other companies to emulate, testing for impairment, not for bodily fluids. Our story number 2 concerns Cannabrand. On October 3rd of last year, Olivia Mannix and Jennifer DeFalco were profiled by the New York Times for their startup, Cannabrand, which was referred to as an advertising agency devoted exclusively to marketing marijuana. Now, these young ladies brought some controversy along as well when in the New York Times piece, Mannix, age 25, said, quote, "We're weeding out the stoners. We want to show the world that normal, professional, successful people consume cannabis," end quote. They also referred to the fact that many of their marketing materials do not even mention the word cannabis or any other word for pot. So we're going to weed out the stoners, show people that marijuana consumers are normal, professional, successful people, and not mention cannabis or marijuana in any way, as if there's something shameful about that. The problem that they didn't understand is there's a fine line between promotion and demonization. And by demonizing the stoners, they turned off a large segment of their potential market. It's admirable to promote marijuana consumption as a positive thing, as something that normal, professional, successful people do. But one does not have to do that by denigrating a so-called stoner image. You could say, quote, "Our brand recognizes that the responsible adult cannabis consumer wants a quality inspected product sold in a comfortable, secure setting by a well-trained professional," end quote. By saying something like that, you've elevated your brand without denigrating anyone. The listener can decide if she is that responsible adult who would love your brand, even if she's a dreadlock, tattooed, body-pierced hippie chick twirling in a tie-dyed sundress to a jam band playing dead tunes at a hemp festival. But if you demonize the marijuana consumer, if you say, "We're weeding out the stoners, we want to show the world that normal, professional, successful people consume cannabis," the listener now has to reconcile her personal identification as a stoner as someone who is an abnormal, unprofessional failure. I mean, imagine McDonald's saying, "We're weeding out the fatties. We want to show the world that normal, healthy, attractive people consume cheeseburgers." You would never hear the end of that. And it doesn't make a lot of sense either to want to weed out the stoners. This is a case of misunderstanding your customers. In the Cannabrand piece, there was a quote about, "It's about reaching non-consumers, women, young people, business professionals, grandmothers and soccer moms, people like me." But that is a complete misunderstanding of where your potential customers lie. There are more consumers aged 21 to 25, and these are monthly consumers. I'm sorry, just all consumers, annual consumers. There are more consumers aged 21 to 25 than all consumers over the age of 35. That is, people in their young 20s, 11.1 million of them, outnumber all the marijuana smokers over age 35. There's 10.7 million of them. There are also twice as many daily cannabis consumers aged 21 to 25, 1.5 million people aged 21 to 25 consuming marijuana every day, as there are all consumers over the age of 65, 740,000. So it's nice to want to reach out to grandmothers, but you'll reach twice as many customers reaching out to people aged 21 to 25. In the accompanying graph, we show the millions of cannabis consumers by age range, and the color-coded bars represent how often they're using marijuana. The lightest green are the rare users, up to one time a month. Occasional users, up to one time a week, are the next shade. Casual users, twice a week. Regular users, 4 times a week. The second to darkest green, frequent users, 6 times a week. And daily users in darkest green, up to 7 times a week, up to almost every day using marijuana. Now, we can take this data and break it down by the frequency of use, and what we'll find is there are half as many people smoking daily as there are smoking rarely, once a month. So there's 8.7 million people that smoke up to once a month, and 4.3 million that smoke up to every day. And again, these are people 21 and over, because we're only concerned with legal cannabis consumers. What this shows you is that building customers out of non-consumers is the most difficult thing to do. Most people would be tokers already if they really wanted to. And increasing consumption by adding more occasional consumers doesn't balance out if you're offending frequent consumers, thanks to something known as the Pareto rule. Some people know this as the 80-20 rule. In the 80-20 rule, 80% of your product will be consumed by 20% of your customers. And that applies to cheeseburgers as well as marijuana. And that is to say, those consumers over there in the dark green bars are going to be consuming 4 or 5 times more, at least, than the consumers in the light green bars. So who do you want to reach? The grandmother who buys an ounce a year? Or the 20-something who buys an ounce a month? And here's a way of looking at that shows how the stoners are your base. Now, we've got the same bars representing rare to daily use, and we've broken it down by if those people used minimum and maximum numbers, because up to 7 days a week would be people that are, anywhere from 350 days to 365 days a year. So if you take those number of days, the minimum and the maximum, and multiply by any particular unit, let's say a gram or a joint or a bowl. And for this, we're just going to pretend that everybody smokes the same amount, which is not true. The rare users aren't going to smoke a whole joint. The daily users might smoke 4 joints a day. But let's just assume everybody smoked the same amount. Even at that, we find that the daily consumers are going to consume up to 1.6 billion units compared to the rare consumers who will barely break 100 million units. More frequent consumers will consume more per day. You have to assume that every stoner you alienate, every person in those darker green bars that you weed out, costs 20 new customers to replace. And every stoner that you weed out tends to tell 10 friends. And think of all those consumers you have to build to replace that one frequent consumer you've offended. Also, it's important to understand that stoners generally are young and male. It's nice to want to reach out to the women, but demographically speaking, the more often one smokes marijuana, the more likely one is male. In fact, almost 2/3 of casual to daily marijuana consumers are male or under the age of 35. And the frequent male consumers, that is 6 to 7 times a week, will consume more marijuana than all female marijuana consumers combined. So reach out to all groups if you want to, but understand that the big money lies in young men. Story number 3 involves Privateer Holdings, a company that has purchased many marijuana companies, including Leafly, which is probably their highest profile brand, Leafly, the Yelp of marijuana. They entered into an agreement last year with the estate of the family of Bob Marley to market marijuana as Marley Natural brand. The Marley Natural brand features a logo of the reggae lion flanked by 2 pot leaves. And this brought some skepticism from fans of the late Rastafarian reggae singer, who dismissed the materialist philosophy of Babylon and said that money can't buy life. So as Privateer acquired these rights and promotions to Marley Natural, the man out in front was Brendan Kennedy. He is the CEO of Privateer, described by KUOW Radio as a former chief operating officer, an MBA from Yale, and a 6-time Ironman triathlete who left a successful job in the banking industry to start Leafly.com. Now, Kennedy explained that Marley Natural is, quote, a premium cannabis brand rooted in the life and legacy of Bob Marley. Bob Marley started to push for legalization more than 50 years ago. We're going to help him finish it. The American cannabis industry is about a $50 billion industry. So Brendan Kennedy had a lot of positive words to say about Bob Marley as he entered this agreement to take a chunk of that $50 billion industry. But doing a little research shows that Brendan Kennedy has not always had that point of view. In November of 2012, Kennedy told KUOW that stoners, quote, are not elevating the conversation, they're perpetuating the negative stereotype, end quote. In February of 2013, Oregon Public Broadcasting reported Kennedy saying, quote, every brand doesn't need to focus on the Grateful Dead or Snoop Dogg or Willie Nelson, end quote. In May of 2013, to Bloomberg Businessweek, Kennedy explained how he wants, quote, no puns, no pictures of pot leaves or giant joints, none of the negative stereotypes. No pictures of pot leaves, he says. But, of course, Marley Natural features 2 pot leaves. And June of 2013, the New York Times did a story on Leafly. Kennedy explained one of the reasons why Privateer was so interested in buying Leafly was, quote, it didn't have any of the old cliches. The site wasn't plastered with pot leaves or pictures of Bob Marley. Pot leaves and Bob Marley, indeed. Now, Kennedy was called on this by Tony Ducapel of NBC News, who writes, quote, Kennedy used to think Bob Marley was a drag on the pot industry. He was wrong, he said. Now he's trying to build a brand that captures the real Marley, less a party animal than a philosopher, a person hungry to connect with the world, not retreat from it. Well, I will just go with what Bob Marley himself said, quote, the greatness of a man is not in how much wealth he acquires, but in his integrity and his ability to affect those around him positively, end quote. Our story number 4 concerns the group Responsible Ohio, the cartel monopolists. They formed in late 2014, trying to pass a constitutional amendment that would set just 10 growers in the entire state of Ohio, set by the state constitution. It has been modeled after a 2009 casino monopoly that passed in their state constitution. The offensive thing they did here was stealing the name of a patient's pack. The Responsible Ohioans for Cannabis has been in existence since 2011. They propose an initiative allowing all adults a 99-plant home garden. Because of the confusion over the names, the patient activists are now facing harassment and death threats and have had to go so far as to put a no monopoly symbol in the middle of their logo. And finally, the story of TerraTech of Irvine, California. They announced a premium cannabis brand called IVXX. That's 420 in Roman numerals. They registered their domain on July of 2014, and in December of 2014 featured a Facebook post of a magazine ad calling themselves the next major legal marijuana brand. The problem with TerraTech's move on IVXX is that IVXX has been in use since 2011. High Times' Bianca Barnhill has been promoting it since 2011, has been wearing the caps at the Cannabis Cup since 2013, was interviewed by the Denver Post in 2013 about IVXX, and their booth at the High Times Cannabis Cups throughout all 2014 featured a large photo wall with the IVXX brand in prominent display. Maybe TerraTech just didn't notice. That's how not to piss off your Cannabusiness clientele. This presentation is available for download from the 420 Radio shop. You can find it at 420radio.org/shop. I'm Radical Russ Belville. Thanks for joining us here for this presentation. You can follow me at Radical Russ on Twitter and Facebook. Find all of our links at 420radio.org for downloads, podcasts, and live streams. And follow my writing at my blog, radicalruss.com. For everyone here at 420radio.org, I'm Radical Russ. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it.